Sufism was first brought to the West by the Indian master, Hazrat Inayat Khan. As the founder of the Sufi order of the West, his title was Pir Murshid. He had 4 children. The eldest, on the left, was Nur-e-Nisa. Next oldest, beside his mother, was Vilayat. In the center, we see Vilayat's younger brother Hidayat, and finally, a younger sister, Claire. In the back row are Hazrat Inayat Khan's 2 brothers. Vilayat's mother was an American, or a baker. Although he was born in England, Pir Vilayat grew up in France, in the family home in Suresnes, a suburb of Paris. Like their father, a noted musician who sang and played the veena, the whole family was musical. Vilayat played the cello, Hidayat the violin. Nur played the veena and sang, and their mother played the harp. Eventually, Vilayat studied with such eminent musicians as Nadia Boulanger, Igor Stravinsky, and Pablo Casals. Like his ancestors, Pir Vilayat often seemed more Afghan than Indian. His hobby was to train falcons and eagles. He had 2 sons, Zia and Mirza. Zia, his older son, was destined to be his successor. Following in the footsteps of his father, Pir Vilayat was to spread the Sufi message of the underlying unity of all world religions far and wide. In time, he was to become the best-known Sufi teacher of the 20th century. He brought the wisdom and actual experiences of the mystical path to thousands. To open one's heart to this magnetic being is to be changed forever.
In 1975, he founded the Abode of the Message, a spiritual community in upstate New York. At heart, he was a hermit. In many ways, he was happiest in caves and high up on mountains. He found his pod rather large, so he built a mini-pod where he could escape the telephone and do his writing undisturbed.
And as you see, I have chosen the most wonderful spot which never fails to uplift my soul, and where I feel so absolutely at home that sometimes I wish I would stop traveling and just spend the rest of my life right here. Water, cactuses, a cave. I sit by the fire meditating, sleep in a cave. What that does to one, well, it's the contact with the hard rock, being protected by the rocks. I wish I could communicate to you how I feel on a retreat all that it means to me, so that you in turn will want to do the same. And when the senses are constrained by the feeling of being walled in, then the soul soars on higher planes. One has to realize that all is God. First, God is beyond multiplicity. Second, you see that all of this is God. And so one is purifying one's realization from the idea of otherness of God. So it is the most utter purification there is. It is ahad, samad. I find it easy, better to open my eyes as I say samad, and instead of seeing the rocks and the water, feel that all that I see is God. It is all God. And then close the eyes in the samadhi state. In the samadhi state, the whole physical universe seems illusory and remote, like a hoax. It's just like awakening in deep sleep. And then as one exhales, one opens one's eyes, and one, instead of, as I say, instead of seeing all this beautiful nature, one sees, of course, it's all the being of God.
I like to think that Sufism has a particular contribution to our time, in that it is trying to explore ways and means of introducing spirituality into everyday life. Now we're going to do what one might call a space age meditation. Imagine that you take off in a spacecraft. Well, at first you're flying over Los Angeles. You know what it's like if you fly in a plane. Then you fly a little higher, and you begin to see the whole coast. And a little higher, and you see the whole United States. But now you don't know what point you're above. Are you above Los Angeles, or are you above New York, or what? You don't know that. Your sense of location in space has become very altered. If you fly higher, then of course you have the vision of the whole planet, which is of course breathtaking, as you imagine, and you think, isn't that extraordinary? I thought that I was located down there in my house, and here I am. I've lost my sense of location. Supposing that you had the courage to take a leap out of the spacecraft and go on a spacewalk, you'd be floating in space. Just imagine the sense of freedom from any support system. At first, the sheer thrill of being so much part of the whole universe. The whole sense of time and space is totally altered. Imagine that you were to identify yourself with your aura instead of your body. Now, what if the aura were the mold in which the body is being formed? And what if indeed the embryo of photons is formed before the embryo of electrons and protons? In other words, you are made of the light of the stars. The stars are no more the object of your perception. They are the very fabric of your being. Your mind is of the same nature as the mind of the universe. And since your aura is intermeshed with that of the stars, you may be aware of the fact that your aura is like, as I said, like a wave in the ocean of light of the universe. It emerges, the whole ocean emerges as each wave. Then your whole concept of yourself is going to be totally altered. You'll always be conscious of the cosmic celebration in the heavens and the drama of the universe. You see that as you awaken, you feel yourself to be luminous, and that doesn't mean just your aura. Somehow your mind is luminous, your emotions are luminous, your consciousness is luminous, intelligence is pure light. And now can you associate awakening with illumination? Because those two go together. Now when you say I've always been a being of light, you don't mean anymore I've always been an aura. You mean I've always been a luminous intelligence. And that, at that level, you can say I have always been, because that is eternal. Whereas the aura is a formation. Imagine that you go through your life continually aware of this sense of identity. And if you do that, of course, you would find yourself in a transfigured world. But looking at people, you would always see the eternal face, the eternal countenance behind the physical face. And looking at the trees, you would see the light structure behind the leaves of the trees and the trunks and the flowers. That would be the state of illumination.
For the Sufis, the power that moves the universe is love. But it's nostalgia. It's a longing for beauty. Everything that is cosmic is also customized in our person, and therefore we experience that love in a personal way in loving a person. Again, seeking beauty in that person. And as Ibn Arabi says, it is God who is the lover and God who is the beloved, wherever there's love. So what we love in a person is the divinity of their being. And I think it's very important for us to find this very deep emotion in our being. There's a kind of longing. And there's pain in it, there's vulnerability in it. I would like to think of our meditations as therapy, and then creativity. The wounds close, because somehow one rises above them. One can use pain as a kind of a springboard to transmute suffering into joy. In fact, it's an energy. It's the energy of the psyche. Suffering is an energy, and you can use that energy. So when you're in pain, somehow you attribute it to a past event. But your nostalgia is moving you out of the past into the future. And the lure of the future is stronger than the push of the past. And the pain has been so far removed that you don't perceive it anymore. Just try. And that is the therapy, that's the cure. Now the emotion of love, of course, one likes to project it in a scenario like Romeo and Juliet or some idyllic romance. But that is, how can I say, like the nexus of something much vast. It's the marriage in the heavens. Later, when we're working with wazifas, we are working with the qualities that are latent within our being, and we're trying to bring them forth so that they may be activated in our personality, and much stronger than so far. But there's one wazifa that is intended to help us to fulfill the purpose of our life. And that's Yafata. Open the door. Now, the only way for the door to open is to pledge oneself to service. And that is the most important moment in one's life, when one decides that one is going to take it upon oneself to be of service. And one needs to be very clear as to what one is promising. One must never make a promise that one can't keep. It happened to me several times in my life, of course, because my mother wanted to spare me all the hardships that it means to be the head of a Sufi order. Wanted me to be a musician, and there was a moment when I think I must have been 16 or 17, when I pledged myself to prepare myself for the mission of spreading the Sufi message at all costs. It's a pledge, and there's no turning back then. And the guru is a kind of Superman that one assumes never makes mistakes, and of course eventually one finds out that he may have feet of clay. Whereas the Murshid is very vulnerable, very human, makes a lot of mistakes and recognizes them, and loves you so much that you forgive him. As long as he really decides not to make any more. And what Murshid said was wonderful when he said, well, first of all, he said, the teacher is there for the pupil. So it's not like the pupils are there for the guru. The teacher is there for the pupil. And then what he says finally is that at first there's that relationship of teacher-pupil, and eventually they're friends. And that is the ultimate fulfillment. And the curious thing is the word wali means two things. There's wali and wali. And one means master and the other means friend. And incidentally, the word vilayat comes from wali. That's something that has proven to be so valuable to people who, they used to, I think that, it's like a school. You've been through a school, and then you've graduated from the school, and then you've got your lives, and a lot of people don't come anymore, but I meet them at airports. I say, Pir Vilayat, "Oh, but you initiated me, but that was many years ago, and I feel really guilty because I haven't attended class anymore." I said, "Not at all, you don't have to feel guilty. We encourage people to go into life." He said, "Yes, but you know, you're always there in my heart. You've left a mark there, and we're always with you. And then when those people come back for a meeting, like just a brother-sisterhood meeting, it's such joy. It's like the family, a family reunion again, and one realizes how deep the bond is between us."
And now, instead of identifying with the physical light, you identify with the light of intelligence. And now, as you exhale, you're experiencing the light of intelligence brightens up your glance. You think of a situation where a mother is showing her child a puzzle, and she says, "Can you see the pixie in the tree?" And "No, Mummy, I can't see it." "Look again." No, I can't see it." Then all of a sudden, "Yes, Mummy, I see it." And all of a sudden, the whole face of the child lights up. That's what I mean, that the aura will burn more brightly because of your the flash of your intelligence. Now, this is some practice you can do every day, and after a few months, ask for somebody to sit in front of you, and you do the same practice. You close your eyes and concentrate on the glance, and as you open your eyes, all of a sudden you see the real countenance of a person behind their face. And it's so beautiful that you can't believe it. That's a word of Hafiz, who said, "If you only knew how beautiful you are, but you would have to borrow my eyes." So now, if you can be with me now. And we're making a pilgrimage to, say, Gangotri in India. So you take the plane to Delhi and land there, and you have at first you have a cultural shock. And then you leave Delhi and you have to take a night train to Hardwar, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a totally new world, and you take a rickshaw to a horse cart to Rishikesh. First of all, you see all these sannyasins in their ochre robes, and the whole sort of feeling of that something very special is happening behind the scene of the day, the daily life of people. And then you start. In the old days, of course, one had to walk. Well, we want to take a bus, but not very far, just 25 miles, and we had to walk. So I'm trying to recollect my own experience of the early days. And you find yourself amongst the throngs of untamed people, colourful peasants, wise people, all kinds, old and young, all bent on discovering the source from which the whole Hindu tradition arose. You're intoxicated by the whole feeling of the quest for the divine presence. And when you think of yourself, then you think, well, I'm a pilgrim. I've left my world behind, and I'm discovering a world which is so different but which is so enchanting. And if you get immersed in it, then you discover your soul. You're transformed.
To be honest, the monk might have to become a jester. Can you see that? To avoid sanctimoniousness. And convey the truth with irony. Because laughter is the best cure against taking oneself too seriously. There's a lot of sanctimoniousness in spirituality. We're going to have the ceremony now at the fire. Those of you who like, you write on a piece of paper the confessions and meet at the bonfire. We have this treasure at our disposal, and most of us are not using it at all. The Sufis use music in their meditations because the fact that music bypasses the mind. When I give initiations, I always formulate 3 wishes. The first is that it should help one to fulfill the purpose of one's life. The second, that will help one to unfurl the potentialities of one's being. And the third, that one should attain illumination.
Yes, please.
And here we are in Kathmandu with the falcon. What's the falcon's name? You don't know yet.
Temujin.
Temujin?
Temujin. It's the name
Temujin.
of Temujin. It's the name of Genghis Khan.
Oh.
Let's try it out. Everything is beings. Planets are beings, stars are beings. Everything is beings. The cells of our bodies are beings. The molecules are beings and so on. Electrons are beings, so everything is beings.
Modified Dharamsala and Putkaya.
I like it there a lot. I also like Dharamsala too. That's where I want to be.
That's where he wants to be.
Fun for you. For you. And this is the origin Tibetan. So sooner or later.
And here the sun rises. Look at the sun as it rises. The sun is your ancestor, not only the ancestor of your body, but also of your soul. And for the Sufis, the soul is an angel, a fragment of the archangel of the sun. The purposes of your life is to discover that sovereignty that is invested in you. And Pir Murshid adds to that, it is the tradition of the kings. I think today we would say of the kings and queens. And the dervish becomes like a king or a queen. Like reaching a state of maturity in the course of your unfoldment as a human being, so that you
are aware that you are the warranty of the divine sovereignty on earth. There has been a fall, a defilement of our status because of our alienation from our origins, the origin of our soul. And so this meditation is an opportunity to remember, to recall the origin of your being in the worlds of light. And become aware of the fact that one is still what one was prior to one's descent in the barzakh, in the Occident, in the world of shadows. But one has forgotten. And now what we want to do is to remember.
Now, I would like to invite all those who would like to come and step into the temple.
Beloved ones of God, Sufi message is the message today being given to humanity. It is not the message of the East, but it is the message of the soul, the spirit. The Sufi message is an answer to the cry of humanity today. At this moment, when materialism is all prevailing, and commercialism is continually on the increase. The Sufi message respects all religions, recognizes all scriptures, regards all the prophets, held in esteem by a large section of humanity, and sees source and goal of all his wisdom in one.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in Ihdinas siratal mustaqim siratal ladzina an'amta alaihim. There's a song of my sister that was composed by my sister, and she composed it when we visited the tomb of my father for the first time in India. So she must have been maybe 13 years old when she wrote it. As a melody, we'll just hum it.
As I say, I'm very moved by the meaning of this historic occasion when, at the age of 83, I am now transmitting that which I owe to all those who have helped me on a spiritual path, the transmission of the Sufis, and as a matter of fact, the message of unity brought by Hazrat Pir Vilayat Khan to my son. In the name of all the prophets, masters and saints of all times who have brought the message of God to the world. In the name of all the Khajras of the Silsila of the Chishti order and other kindred orders, Qadriya, Sarwadi. In the name of Hazrat Inayat Khan, we honor the great tradition behind what is being transmitted today to my son Pirzadeh Zia, who will be initiated as a peer. I use you to as a peer in the Sufi order, founded by my father. I hand to you the rosary of my father and your grandfather, in which he has said many wazaif, thousands of wazaif.
There's a way of incorporating
the past into the future. Because the past has left a mark or leaves a mark in the present and the future, while at the same time the present and the future are not limited by the past. So when we are comparing different religions, or even saying I'm a Christian, or I'm a Jew, or I'm a Muslim, or I'm a Buddhist, we are the villager. We haven't started to discover the galaxies, because from that time we cannot be limited by a certain ism like Buddhism or Hinduism, but no, that's a future. So the message of Pir Murshid is not just to try to unite religions with each one remain separate, but it is to show a kind of super religion which incorporates them all, because it is turned to the future, because it's not limited by the past. Let's say our realization gets upgraded and our thinking gets updated. Our realization gets upgraded, our thinking gets updated. That means that our thinking needs to advance as compared with the thinking of our predecessors. I must say, it has been such a joy to share with you the encounter of our thoughts, sparking each other, the vision, the meaning of the message of the future. All of it has been exciting and overwhelming. And I'm very grateful for your sharing with me. This word, from the moment that one has broken bread at the same table, one is linked by a special link. And that's the reason for the Mass. The Mass is the disciples of Christ were eating at the same table together. And we have been sharing this wonderful bread and wine at the same table. And that establishes a link between us that can never be broken. So that we can always find each other. Some of you say you can find yourself, you can find me in your heart. And I can say, I can find you in my heart.